Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Creating a Superpowered Mobile Strategy, put on by the Bross Group. We designed this webinar to help you kind of line out key components to making your mobile strategy successful. So we're going to go ahead and get started. A little housekeeping. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type those in the chat window. Also, if you're having any technical difficulties, please go ahead and put those in the chat as well, or in the Q&A section. We'll go ahead and try and handle those as soon as possible. So there's going to be a couple of us presenting today, and I'll get into that in a second. But first, while other people might be joining, I thought I'd kind of talk about who Bross Group is for a moment. Kind of a brief description of who we are. Bross Group is a premier IT consulting talent management firm dedicated to helping clients across multiple industries with all their IT requirements. Bross Group has a unique intersection of service delivery and practice areas that enable clients to enhance value and promote nimble technology restructuring. Some quick hitting notes about us. We were founded in 2004, so we've had 10 years developing, architecting, implementing successful solutions in various technology verticals. Consultants average 17 years of experience with us, consistently recognized as best places to work by the Denver Business Journal. Microsoft Gold Certified Partner, nominated for Colorado Companies to Watch, February 2014. Certified Women's Business Enterprise member, Certified National Women Business Owners Corporation member as well. And we have 4 service areas at the Bross Group. We do strategic staffing, consulting, direct placement, and managed services. We're kind of a rare breed company that provides all 4 of these services. We do this because it allows you to go to one place for all your IT and organization needs. The Bross Group IT Consulting and Managed Services components provide many solutions aside from just business continuity or cybersecurity. They include SharePoint Cloud Solutions, Office 365, project management, mobile solutions, virtualization, and strategy planning. We have clients who utilize just one of these services, combination, or sometimes all of them. Today, we're going to be talking about the mobile solutions component of this. And here's some of the clients that we currently work with, and we have extensive experience in developing technology strategies and providing these resources. In many cases, Bross Group not only develops the IT work, but also assists in building strategies to make sure solutions are a long-term answer. When you engage with Bross Group, you will receive the best practices and strategies in combination with some of the brightest IT talent available. This is how Bross Group is able to deliver results and exceed expectations. So our presenters today are myself, Director of Marketing here at Bross Group, served as American Marketing Association board member for 2 years, co-marketing chair for Symposium 2014, which is if you haven't heard of that, it's a huge technology conference that's going to be happening here in Denver in November. I'd recommend looking that up. 15 years experience managing business operations, creating marketing strategies in a variety of sectors. We also have Dan Biskup. You want to say hi, Dan?
Hey guys, how you doing?
He's a senior consultant at Bross Group. Has developed 25 mobile applications and mobile infrastructures. 21 years developer and integration experience in .NET, web services, SQL, SharePoint, XML, C#, and much, much more. So, to get started, what should you take away from this webinar? A lot of times mobile is kind of a big, broad topic, but we want to make sure that you understand the strategy behind it. Why mobile needs to be at the core of your business strategy, the difference between mobile apps and a mobile strategy, the 6 components of a successful mobile approach, and how to choose the right solution provider. So the mobile importance, I know we all have statistics that we've read or seen before, but I wanted to hit on some of these again just to reiterate the importance of mobile. 6.7 billion mobile subscriptions worldwide, and estimated to increase to 9.3 billion by 2019. There are currently more mobile devices than people. 27% of companies worldwide plan to implement location-based marketing in 2013. 25% of international media and marketing executives see mobile as the most disruptive force in their industry. Time spent with mobile apps starting to challenge television. Consumers are spending 127 minutes per day in mobile apps, which is up 35% from 94 minutes a day in the same time last year. So they spent, in converse, they spent 168 minutes watching television per day. 74% of U.S. consumers use location-based services on their smartphone, and 46% of mobile phone users use location-based services. Mobile is fast becoming the technology of choice, and because of this, your firm needs to be in the space. From a marketing perspective, your customers, members, clients are all interacting in a variety of ways to get information, communicate, and make purchases. So again, why do I need a superpowered mobile strategy and not just an app? Will the app run on all platforms? Some of the questions you need to be asking yourself is, will the app run on all platforms? What is an app with no data? What can you do with the data? What is data without security? And the app is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, so this is kind of a big slide here. So, I mean, there's a lot of talking points on this whole slide, and we'll discuss further as the presentation continues. But some of the important points here is, like, you know, anybody can make just a simple app. But what about all the different pieces, like we talked about security and data? That's the hard stuff to talk about.
So common mobile strategy gaps, that kind of brings us into some of the gaps that companies that we see or deal with have, and that's no plan. They know they want an app, they just don't have a plan for it. And
some strategy gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And inconsistent communication and integration gap, disseminating information, applications providing user value, and it doesn't work like it should. So if you have any of these things kind of happening to you when you're developing your mobile strategy, the chances of it being successful are going to be very little. And do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so there's a couple other strategy gaps, and a lot of times people talk about, you know, mobile web versus mobile app. And so when you're looking at your strategy, there's things to think about as well, like is the person always going to be connected to the internet? So can you get away with a mobile website versus a mobile app? And I see a lot of clients, they falter on this to make a mobile, you know, website, and the person doesn't have access to the internet when they're in the field, trying to collect data, it doesn't work correctly. You know, to Justin's point, you know, does it work like it should? And there's many differences between each one of these strategies, and you know, that's some of the things we're going to talk about here.
So to create successful strategy, we sliced it into 6 components. If you don't include all these components, your mobile strategy will, like I just said, have a high likelihood of failure. These components consist of, if you look at this kind of graphic here I created, you cut off somebody's arm, it's not going to work as well as if they had all their legs or their head. It's not going to work as well without, obviously, if you don't have, you know, the brain behind it, it's not going to work. So if you cut any of these pieces out, you're really going to be hurting yourself. The purpose and business objectives, creating something of value to the user, UI and UX, or user interface or user experience, integration, application development, so built for all platforms, business intelligence, or the analytics behind it. Again, you have to have all of these components to make your strategy successful. So to get into the purpose, strategy, and business objectives, so we'll get every one of those 6 slices we'll talk about separately here. And the first one is purpose, strategy, and business objectives. What are the ways to build strategy the right way? Assess and address. Now I like this graphic because it represents what we're kind of talking about. That fish that's jumping the fishbowl to go to that nicer fishbowl, it's assessed its situation, knows what it has there, is looking ahead, and is addressing it by jumping out, kind of taking a little bit of a risk and then getting into a better situation. So there's a methodology to building a strategy or having a purpose for your mobile strategy. It is the most important part and difficult part of your mobile efforts. Again, I like this because your current situation dictates what your future situation is going to be. So how do you start molding your strategy? You assess what you currently have, like I said, decide what you want the strategy to accomplish, create a roadmap to get there, hold meetings and include representation from stakeholders for the strategy, such as head of sales, marketing, operations, business vision leaders. It may also be beneficial to consider having a mobile strategy third party to be involved at this early stage, kind of for an outsider point of view. It's always nice to have that outside view of not only the market, but kind of an opinion of what might be going on internally to your company. So how do you go about assessing what you have? The best approach to what we've discovered is in 3 function areas. So we talk about people, and we talk about the processes within that, and then we also talk about the technology within that too. So it's the people, process, and technology that needs to be assessed in order to create the strategy you want to create. Actually, let me go back to that slide really quick. It's key to also have a non-biased point of view when doing this type of assessment, and a third party is kind of nice to have for this. And to give you an example of what needs to be assessed, we have kind of a set of light questions. We go deeper into this when we actually go do full assessments with companies, but this will give you guys a start, and I can actually maybe post these to our website and also give these to you guys if you'd like. How does your team utilize IT systems and tools? Describe how your team interacts with its customers. So project requests, technical support, leads, etc. Do you know who to engage when you need something for mobile technology? Are your interactions with mobile generally positive? Using a letter grade, how would you rate the reliability of your IT systems and tools? Does your leadership help prioritize their work in relation to a mobile strategy? I.e., is there a mobile steering committee, and do you participate in it? Do you have any outstanding unresolved requests for mobile solutions? So machine-to-machine, consumer-facing, integrations, etc. Are mobile representatives available to you on a regular basis? So these are all things that if you don't have them internally, you need to know what component of that you might need to create your mobile strategy, your mobile app, your mobile, whatever you're looking to do mobily. So after you determine where you stand on people, process, and technology, you can now make informed decisions on what to do next. You can now answer the questions of, do I have the right people? Do we have enough resources? Are the processes in place to make the strategy successful from the C level all the way down to the entry level? Now, being a marketing person, this is important to me because it goes back to kind of branding and your business objectives and what you want those to be, and that funneling down all the way through the entire company. And your mobile strategy should also represent that. Are the technologies that currently exist sufficient to create what you want to create? So again, do you have the infrastructure people? Do you have analytics? Do you have developmental resources? Do you have analytical programs that can take all this data and create the strategy you want to create? So the next thing you need to do, obviously, is build your strategy. So you determine the ultimate goal and the things you need to get to that goal. Do you know the steps involved before a potential customer eventually buys from you? What do they do to buy? What are the different, how many interactions does it take before somebody buys your particular product from you? This helps you determine the direction of your strategy. So we'll give you an example. So we deal a lot with membership associations. What interactions do we always ask, what interactions do these members have, or to slice it further, potential members? So membership associations are always trying to go after new members or retain their membership. And chances are they have that data in their CRM or their CMS systems of who they are and how they're interacting with them. But you need to be able to know how to slice and pull the statistical data in order to make informed decisions on buyer behavior. And you need to include these behavior patterns in how you build your apps and your mobile strategy. You will see, so we'll get into some interesting trends here in a minute. I'll show you guys. But next up is the user value component. So is your mobile solution a hero or a villain? It's kind of again, to play on the metaphor of the superpowered strategy. User value is something never to undervalue. Having an app with little or no value to the user is like having a super villain and not a superhero as an app. It will affect your entire brand if you don't provide value, and as we'll discuss, a greater user experience if you have a good app or have a good mobile strategy. If the user doesn't find your app or mobile solution useful, it will not get used. So you're kind of throwing away money in those instances. Not only are you throwing away money, but you're also throwing away your brand because their interaction and the value that they see from it goes back to your brand.
Yeah, so if you think about it as well, I mean, most people, as soon as you go to a bank or go to any kind of company, the first thing a lot of people do is look for apps. Most people are going to look for an app for that given company. And so it goes along with what you're saying with the brand piece. If you don't have an app, or if you have a poor performing app, or it could be detrimental to your marketing strategy.
Yeah, and to get into what is user value on the next slide, let's just take a minute to look at this information. And these are just some statistics I pulled. These are national numbers. And it shows, if you look at the one on the left, time spent per app category. So you have different categories: utilities, entertainment, social networking, games. I mean, you might fall into some of these. Obviously, I use social networking, being a marketing person. I play a few games, but not many. Utilities, entertainment, like I said. The one on the right is really interesting to me as well, because that actually breaks it up a little differently. This talks about the total usage, not just within apps. So the other one's just apps on the left. The other one is overall usage and time usage across the board. And you'll notice that most of the time, a little more than 75% of the time, is spent in apps. So a lot of companies will try and sell you on responsive design, and that might not be the route for your company. So let's pretend for a second the information on the slide is the behavior of your organization client base. So again, take a second to look at the data. One pie chart shows the app category, and the other shows the time spent within anything on a mobile device. When you are building your mobile strategy, what could you take from this? First thing to notice is how little they use their browser. This tells you that your client base uses apps heavily, so the majority of your focus should be on the app side. Maybe you think a responsive site is enough. If you pay attention to data, it's not. It also tells you roughly 25% of the time spent on their devices is spent on social media, 18% alone in Facebook. This tells you there should be heavy integration with social, and even a social sign-up feature to have it automatically integrate and make it easier for your company to gain followers. The somewhat big surprise to me is the amount of time on games, mostly because I maybe spend 1% of my personal time on games. I just don't have time to play them, but I know a lot of people do, and that's fine. Perhaps the app should have some sort of gamification component to it. So developing that gamification, if you don't know what gamification is, gamification is the use of game thinking and game mechanics in non-game context to engage users in solving problems. A great example is, I don't have a screenshot of this, but I recently used a Charmin app, and they have a GPS locator that's kind of a gamification in how you find clean bathrooms. And they use a GPS. We have some examples of GPS stuff we've done I'll get into, but I love it because I will drive an extra block or 2 blocks in order to find a clean bathroom, but they have reviews, and it's kind of a game. So that's an example of kind of a gamification of it and a user value that can be done. The fact of the matter is, you need to know who you're catering to or targeting, and be able to use this information to create mobile solutions that resonate and provide value. A lot of people miss this. They don't take the data, and they don't use it the correct way, and they don't know how to get the data out of whatever silo of information they have. This data should be something you can mine with the right people having the right skills to deliver that data to you. So whether it's a third party, somebody internally, that's where that assessment of where you are in the people of technology and the process comes into play.
It's an interesting point. Back to looking at the common mobile strategy gaps. If you look at this chart here with the percentages, I mean, people are looking specifically for the app versus just looking for the mobile web. So,
if that's the data for your company, that's an overall data which could pertain to your company. You need to be in the app space. It's pretty obvious. It's nice to have that responsive design, which is really easy to do, but you really need to be in the app space and creating an app that provides all these values and these 6 components that we're talking about. So to get on to the user interface and the user experience. So user experience, if you don't know what user experience is and the user interface, it's the look and feel or the marketing of the app. Not just the app, but how it's integrated with entire business strategy too. It should be created using behavior knowledge on anticipating what a user will do. In order to fulfill desired actions, it must be easy to access, understand, and use. So what elements do you need in an app? Well, there's a lot of stuff to list here. I'm going to try and make them kind of succinct as I can. But when you're choosing your user interface elements, users have become familiar with interface elements acting in a certain way. So try to be consistent, predictable in your choices and their layout. Doing so will help with task completion, efficiency, and satisfaction. Interface elements include, but aren't limited to, input controls, navigational components, informational components, containers. So anything you kind of look and see in an app, like your buttons and things like that. So
just something interesting to add to as we're going through this, like, so if you look at an Android app versus iOS app, they have slightly different look and feel components. And so we talked a second ago about like mobile web versus mobile app. So if you're an iOS user, iPhone user, and you click a calendar, you're used to the way a calendar pops up and scrolls. So if you look at most mobile websites, they can be whatever you want. So giving that user the experience, talking about this UI UX slide, giving them the experience that they expect and are comfortable with, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, and there's so much to take into, there's more than you probably have thought of to take into consideration, or just within input controls, for example. Buttons, text fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, drop-down lists, list boxes, toggles, date fields, like we were just talking about. Navigational components, which are a little different. Breadcrumbs, sliders, search field, pagination, slider, tags, icons. Breadcrumbs being basically kind of bringing somebody along with some kind of component, navigational component within it. Informational components, you have tooltips, icons, progress bars are really important. People don't want to sit there and look at a blank screen. Notifications, message boxes, containers. Now, containers is one thing I'd be cautious about or be careful with. It's usually an accordion type of feature. There are times when multiple elements might be appropriate for displaying content. When this happens, it's important to consider the trade-offs. For example, sometimes elements that can help you save space put more of a burden on the user mentally by forcing them to guess what is within the drop-down or what the element might be. So again, you have to know how people are going to react or act, and that's why having a third party a lot of times is helpful in these things when you're developing these apps, because you don't want to make these mistakes. Because if somebody downloads your app, it's no good, it's going to get a bad review, and you're going to lose those people. And obviously, it's important looking at that data we just looked at.
Yeah, so we look back at that, the marketing branding piece with the villain versus the superhero, so I mean, we've all used an app, I'm sure, that doesn't work very well, and you're like, this isn't very good, and so you think, why is this, First Bank don't have a very good application, they put all this money in, you think they have a good app, and they don't, so, once again, everybody uses their specific device, and so it's hard to get a feel for how is this going to look and work on Android versus Windows Phone, or if you only use iOS, how does that look on the platform? So once again, a third-party perspective allows you to make sure that you're getting that native user experience that everybody's accustomed to and they want, and therefore you end up being on the hero side, not the villain.
And to get into more of the best practices, the main things to kind of keep it, the main takeaways to keep in mind are the few things I listed here, and I'll get into a little more detail within these kits. We've all heard this before. It kind of sounds rude when you say it out loud, but keep it simple, stupid. And I say this to myself all the time because I tend to make things way more difficult than I need to at times. And we all probably do that. A layout must have a purpose, the color, texture, typography. It must communicate what is happening and what defaults do you need. So best practices for designing an interface, everything stems from knowing your users, including understanding their goals, skills, preferences, and tendencies. Once you know about your user, make sure to consider the following when designing your interface. Keep the interface simple. Like we just said, the best interfaces are almost invisible to the user. They avoid unnecessary elements and are clear in the language they use on labels and messaging. Create consistency and use common UI elements. By using common elements in your UI, users feel more comfortable and are able to get things done more quickly. It is also important to create patterns in language, layout, and design through the site to help facilitate efficiency. Once a user learns to do something, they should be able to transfer that skill to other parts of the site. Be purposeful in page layout. Consider spatial relationships between items on the page and structure the page based on importance. Careful placement of items can help draw attention to the most important pieces of information and can aid scanning and readability. Strategically use color and texture. This is near and dear to my heart in branding and marketing. So you can direct attention toward or redirect attention away from from items using color, light, contrast, and texture to your advantage. Use typography to create hierarchy and clarity. Carefully consider how you use this. The typeface, the different sizes, fonts, arrangement of the text to help increase scannability, legibility, and readability. Make sure that the system communicates what's happening. Always inform your users of location, actions, changes in state or errors. The use of various UI elements and communicate status, and if necessary, next steps can reduce frustration for your user. So think about the defaults. Again, this is something a lot of people skip. They don't think about defaults, what's going to happen. By carefully thinking about and anticipating the goals people bring to your site, this is where that data comes into play too. You can create defaults that reduce the burden on the user. This becomes particularly important when it comes to form design, where you might have an opportunity to have some fields pre-chosen or filled out. So that pre-chosen thing, we all do this if you're in marketing, if you're a business strategist within your company, when you're designing something, when you have somebody sign up for a newsletter, what do you typically see? You see the checkbox yes mark, right? Well, why do you think that is? Because a lot of people don't press that extra button, and now they're opted in to your newsletter or whatever you want them to opt into. So that type of thinking you need to think about. So we're going to give an example of like a UI UX that Dan has developed, and this is from I believe it's Boy Scouts of America app. So I'll let you kind of talk about this.
So one thing we haven't so much discussed exactly is, the return on investment, ROI, as far as, so you have a mobile strategy, and so what is the company going to get back for this, and why have a mobile strategy? So we talked about all the different caveats and how to build one and so forth, and how to build up kind of a team to do these things. But so this particular app, and I could talk forever on this app, so I'll try to keep it brief, is basically this thing was designed from the ground up with ROI in mind. And so, we talked about, simple interface and those kind of things. And this is a very simple interface. And what this app kind of does is it allows us to, this is a sales application. So this is where the ROI piece comes in. So there's a missing gap. Like, how do I know which houses items were sold? So that's kind of...
It's important to add to that this isn't a customer-facing app. It's for the sales team.
In this example, this part of it, yes, is for basically sales team. And so the idea was they wanted to have a kind of a door-to-door sales product, and they wanted to see where things were sold and where they weren't. And so there's pieces like they wanted heat maps and things to see, if the sale was already done. They wanted to be able to click a button and repress, do the sale. If a person bought a certain amount of items last year, maybe they want to buy the same thing again. So the gap that you noticed when they designed this application, once again, ROI in mind, was the fact that, hey, we're missing out on houses that don't have items sold, or the people are going to the same house where things are sold, so they're being turned away. So once again, what this particular screen shows is a very simple user experience, user interface. Shows the different colored dots show if the houses were visited or not. So we can say that, okay, this house is green. Nobody's been to this house yet. This house is red. Let's not go there. They already have an order placed. And so right away, we're seeing like a pretty substantial increase in return on investment, because we're in an 8-hour day where we have sales agents out there hitting door to door. We're not going to the same house every single time. It's a GPS-enabled app. And once again, it allows people on this particular screen to show if they've been visited or not. The screen has a neighborhood view, and that's what those pins are, as prospect data, effectively. Color-coded for market saturation. And then if you notice, as far as user experience, you're on a mobile device or an iPad or what have you, and so these buttons are large. They're not, small scrollers and whatnot. They're big buttons, because I'm pressing these buttons as I go through my route. So once again, we're keeping it simple. The layout is purpose-built. Color, texture, very simple, very easy to use, and it's very easy to see what's happening in the app. And there's on this particular screen, the default data is where you're at, so it takes your local position and it figures out where you're at.
Okay, so the next component of the 6 components we were discussing is the integration. So that's an app that doesn't talk to your back end, and this is a huge component that a lot of third parties miss that develop apps. A lot of companies miss is that integration component and what you can really do with integration. So when I talk about integration, I'm not just talking about making the technology integrate. Integration is bringing your business plan to life and integrating it with your mobile solutions. Components of a well-integrated and superpowered mobile strategy are the alignment with business objective and mission, a user need is solved with the mobile strategy, and the useful data is collected for nurturing user interaction for business objective. So go ahead and add to this, Dan, if you have anything.
Yeah, so I mean, anybody could build an iOS app. I mean, by default, the tools are on an Apple computer, but then what about the other platforms? What about your data? What about the data security? So that's kind of the larger pieces. And if you look at most of the companies out there, they focus on just the application, maybe the user experience, excuse me, but what about the data? So once again, in the example I showed a second ago, it was all about the data. The data is where the value is. How can we find places where the sales agent hasn't gone? In the bathroom app, where can I take the data and show the clean bathrooms? That's data integration. There's security pieces, that a lot of people aren't thinking of, like, do you want your data exposed publicly on the internet where people can just, pull your data down? So you got to think about declarative security, and you got to think about, RESTful services and all these, technical terms you see on the internet, and how to put them all together in your mobile strategy. So that's integration.
And then the last, not the second to last component, my fault, is the development. So the development of the app itself and the solution should work on all platforms. It should be one code based. And the back-end development, again, with the database, that goes back to the integration a little bit, but it goes into the development as well because it has to be developed. Anyone can make an app, and I'll let you kind of speak to that if you want.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to what I just said in the last slide. These tools, like if you make an Android app, you spin up Eclipse to make an app, great. But what about the iOS users? What about the Windows Phone? If we look at the statistics on the what devices are out there, you're going to see Windows Phone is slowly taking over a lot more of the market. Have you built the app to work on Windows Phone natively? Have you built the app to work with iOS, which is always going to be around? So these are the pieces we talked about, is all the different major platforms and how to accommodate for the different user experience on each one that people are expecting. They want the slider wheel on iOS. They want different people picker options on on Android devices. And so, can you build in your mobile strategy an architecture where you have one code base? I mean, these are your assets. So you build this whole thing, build it once, use many times. So that's a development process.
And then one of the most important components that we've kind of hit on all the way through this is the business intelligence and the analytics. So what data needs to be collected? How do I decide on what data needs to be measured? What do I do with the data? How's the data look? And heat map. So what do you do with the data now that you have it?
Yeah, so look at this slide here. So you have, and this is kind of a zoomed out example, but it shows market saturation 1%. So if I had a sales team, do I want them to go to the 1% area or the place that's completely red and so it's all the sales are had? So the data is what's important here. So you have the application, it does application stuff, but what do you do with the data? And so in this case, once again, this app was built purposely, to handle these anomalies we found in the data. And so once again, you have the market saturation is 1%. So this is where I want my sales team to go, and it gives you the zip code and so forth. So once again, you have the app. The data is what's important. So what do you do with the data? And that's what you kind of you almost start with that to kind of get a feel for what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. And so choosing a mobile solution provider, creating I like Adam West. It's hard to admit, but I like the old Batman TV show. So creating a mobile solution is tough. Robin, could you help? So Batman didn't do it alone. It's really hard to do this alone. So choosing a solution provider is extremely important. What experience do they have in how to choose? I should start over. Criteria for choosing a mobile solution provider. You want to ask a series of questions. What experience do they have in mobile infrastructure? Bring your own device. Do they build for all platforms? The UI experience of it. Do they have experience helping you figure out what the UI should be? Business intelligence, what can you see with the data? Infrastructure management, can they get servers operational for you? A lot of app companies don't have that hard infrastructure background. So kind of be on the lookout for that too, because that's another very important, and understanding of infrastructure is very important to your app up and running. Because say you got 10,000 hits all of a sudden because your app showed up on Oprah or something, and it crashed. It crashed your server. So you got to have that expandability and thinking about that infrastructure side of it as well.
But the only thing I'd add to this slide is you should have put like a big BAM or wham or whatever on there. Big explosion on the side.
Yeah, I kind of had the wham with that one. But so the next steps for your super powered mobile strategy is you want to engage experts in mobile, whether it's just an initial conversation to what you need to do to really get there, which is kind of what we're trying to provide here with this webinar. Know clearly what your business, should have had an R in there. Know clearly what your business objectives are. Align your business objectives with your mobile strategy. And don't wait. Mobile is passing you by right now. It's already been established, as you probably know, and your strategy needs to go from the top of your company down. And if you think about it, you know, there's everywhere you go, successful companies now have a really, really good mobile strategy. They have that in common. So it can be anywhere from Vail Resorts to Charmin to Boy Scouts of America, like that. We have it's there, and use it. So
expectation.
Yeah, it's an expectation now. So having said that, our contact information is down on the bottom. We would love to hear from you if you want to discuss how we can help with your app strategy. I can also give you kind of that light assessment and give you a link to that. So please do reach out to us at brosgroup.com. There's a contact us page right in there. And then 303-945-2700 is our local number here in Colorado. We have a 1-800 number. I just don't have it in front of me at the moment. So please do contact us if you have any further questions and you'd like to discuss what these strategies can do for you. And having said that, is there any questions or anything you might want to ask from either myself or Dan? And I'll wait like a minute or two here, and if not, we'll go ahead and adjourn the webinar. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So again, if you do reach out to us, please let us know what questions you have there. I think there's also a survey on the back end of this, so please do go ahead and take the time to fill that out so we know what we need to improve. And we hope to see you at our next one. I think we have some possibly one coming up on AMS and another cloud strategy webinar. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk soon.